As Secretary of the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, Herschel Vinyard is playing a critical role in Governor Scott's landmark Everglades Water Quality Plan. We're going to hear more about that today. Secretary Vinyard has directed cooperative efforts between the department, water management districts, and local stakeholders to develop the most effective application of the $1.8 billion investment in Everglades protection. These projects have created thousands of jobs and will implement best management practices over 640,000 acres. One of the things that Secretary Vinyard has focused on since taking office is fostering a more collaborative approach between the department, local government businesses, environmental organizations, and concerned citizens. We welcome him today, and we look forward to his speech. Secretary Vinyard.
Thank you, Manny, and it's an honor to be here. I was reading up on the Forum Club since I kind of got short notice in the last 24, 48 hours that I was going to be here. I saw your list of speakers, and wow, y'all are able to attract some really world-class speakers. I guess maybe the only good news is I don't have a book to sell. The governor asked me before I get started, he wanted me to recognize two folks that are here, and he was going to recognize them. And I haven't met them yet, but one of them is the past Forum Club president, Miss Wendy Link. According to the governor, Miss Link has had extraordinary impact in her efforts for affordable, high-quality higher education. So thank you from the governor, Miss Link. The second person that the governor wanted me to recognize was Kelly Smallridge, and I haven't met Kelly either, but oh, hey, Kelly, right there in front. According to the governor, you're one of the most aggressive economic development professionals in the state, and so in his eyes, you're a real rock star, so thank you for what you do for this area. Real briefly, my background has been in the private sector. I practiced environmental law for a number of years, and then I participated in business for another decade or so, and so I've been at DEP for 2 3/4 years. It's been a great learning experience. My philosophy is, in order for us to have a healthy economy, we've got to have a healthy environment. I don't think you can have one without the other, particularly in a state like Florida, where folks want to come here because of our natural resources. Our tourism industry is dependent upon the beautiful beaches and waterways that we have in Florida. One of the things that I took from the private sector is, hey, we got to focus. Can't solve world hunger or world peace, so let's focus on some things that we can make a difference in. And so I came up with only 3 priorities for DEP, and one of them is water. In my view, we've got to focus on water quality and water quantity. The priority is, we call it at DEP, is getting the water right. As I looked at my organizational chart at DEP, there was nobody responsible for water in a senior position. And I wanted somebody to wake up every morning and think about water from a statewide perspective, water quality and water quantity. So one of the first things I did is I created a deputy secretary position. And that way we can provide the focus. It was really unbelievable to me that a state that's so dependent upon water did not have that high-level focus. So far, it's worked well. Another thing I wanted to do is establish a sense of urgency. Sometimes government agencies get in a rhythm or routine, and it's not fast enough, or at least it wasn't quick enough for me. And so I tried to encourage our folks. The environment needs quicker help, and the people are demanding it. So we've tried to speed things up and establish that sense of urgency. I'll say that, in everything that DEP has done in the last 2 3/4 years, we couldn't have done it without the governor's leadership and without the support of the Florida legislature. Everything that we've done in 2 3/4 years has been with bipartisan support. Just about every bill that DEP has brought in front of the Florida legislature has passed either with unanimous support or only a couple of no votes. And that tells me that we're all pulling on the same end of the rope now. It's not a Republican issue. It's not a Democratic issue. It's a water issue. And we all, I hope, have the same objectives. And so I wanted to give the Florida legislature and the governor the respect and the applause that they deserve. I want to talk about 3 water issues. Opportunities, challenges. The first one has to do with nutrients. I called my senior staff in, my water quality experts, and said, what's the biggest problem that our state faces with respect to water quality? Quick answer, nutrients. For those of y'all that don't live in my world, nutrients are nitrogen and phosphorus. Water bodies need nitrogen and phosphorus to be healthy. But like a lot of things, too much of them is not a good thing, and that's what triggers the algal blooms. The sources, and I'm sorry you're at lunch, but it's septic tanks, wastewater treatment plants, pet waste, improper fertilization on people's yards or on farms. It's all the above. It's kind of what we create, and it's a statewide problem. And I asked my folks, I said, well, what are we doing about it? And the answer I got back, well, there's a federal lawsuit. It's politically charged. A lot of hate and discontent going on about the issue. And I said, that's not acceptable. We're responsible for doing something about that. We need to do it regardless of whether there's a lawsuit. So we pulled together Florida's top scientists at DEP, and they came up with the science that we needed to establish what the nutrient levels should be in our water bodies, and the rule to implement it. So a lot of things that we do, we have to get approval from EPA, our federal partner. And so we brought it to the scientists in Atlanta, EPA's regional office, and they said, Florida may have hit the mark on this. And so they had to ship it up to Washington, D.C. for approval. And so you had EPA senior scientists in Washington, D.C., senior Obama administration officials. They said, wow, Florida may have done it. And so we've joined hands with EPA using best science to come up with the nutrient rules that we need. EPA says that we've now developed the most comprehensive nutrient reduction program in the country. They're still not implemented yet. The federal lawsuit continues. However, the latest hearing, the judge signaled, it's a federal judge in Tallahassee, things are looking pretty well. And so we're hoping that by this winter we will be released to implement these rules. By the way, the Florida legislature already approved them. I believe it was unanimous support. Democrats and Republicans, and Governor Scott signed the bill. So what we're looking forward to is actually starting this nutrient reduction program that the lawsuit has held up. I do want to recognize DEP's district director for this area is Ms. Jill Creech in one of the front tables here. Jill left a successful engineering firm. She's a professional engineer and designed wastewater treatment plants. And that's the kind of expertise and dedication that we have at DEP. And now Jill's going to be able to, once we get these rules in place, regulate those wastewater treatment plants. I do want to pause and tell you that Florida is incredibly blessed with the number of folks that work for DEP or the water management districts. we've got some very, very smart scientists and engineers that make our life and our environment much better. They might be able to make more money in the private sector, but so many of them are doing this for public service, and so we're very, very fortunate. Second issue, and Manny mentioned this, is Everglades water quality. I wish y'all could have been a fly on the wall when I briefed Governor Scott about what was going on with Everglades water quality. He was new and I was new, but I had to quickly get smart on what's been going on in the Everglades. And as I explained to him that the United States and the state of Florida had been fighting for the last 25 years over water quality. And we had DEP involved in water management districts, environmental groups, the Corps of Engineers, Department of Interior, 2 Native American tribes. Just about everybody had been in a food fight for 25 years, and only the lawyers were benefiting. And so you all know the governor is a very solutions-oriented governor, and he said, solve this problem. So again, we turn to the scientists at DEP, great Florida scientists, the scientists at the South Florida Water Management District. I will pause right now and recognize Ernie Barnett, who is he is an awesome public servant. Ernie and his team at the Water Management District are fantastic. He knows so much. I've learned so much from him, and he truly, truly gives it all and cares so much about our natural environment here. But we turn to those scientists, Ernie and his team, and my folks at DEP, and they came up with a solution to Everglades water quality. It was probably half the price that what the feds were contemplating, but we think it's going to work better. We worked very diligently with the Obama administration. Again, Governor Scott, he does not mind picking up the phone, and so when our kind of bureaucracies ground to a halt, he didn't mind reaching out to Attorney General Holder or Secretary Darcy, who runs the Corps of Engineers, or then Secretary Salazar with the Department of Interior, EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson. And they built that relationship, and that's what kind of caused the bureaucracy to free up. And finally, we have a agreed upon Everglades water quality plan. We're ahead of schedule, the district is. You all know I think this week, the county approved the Mecca Farms purchase. That's going to give great benefit to the Loxahatchee River restoration, so we're very excited about that. So after 25 years, we have the agriculture community, the environmental community, the Scott administration, the Obama administration, and maybe more importantly, 2 federal judges who are happy. And it's because we worked with one another to get to our common solution. Final issue that we've been spending an awful lot of time on is the estuaries along the Caloosahatchee and St. Lucie River. As y'all know, they've been inundated with fresh water this year. We've had 2 almost back-to-back wettest months on record. June and July were extraordinary for us. It's not a simple problem. It's a very, very challenging issue to manage. We have lots of people who don't want water in their homes, and so there's a significant flood control component of that. We have wild swings in Florida weather. As I mentioned, we've had a huge amount of rain this summer. I can tell you 2 years ago, we were getting bombarded with emails from the folks on the West Coast, on the Caloosahatchee side, begging the Corps of Engineers for more water to come down the river there. They couldn't get the boats out of the boathouse. It was so dry. And so it's very, very difficult. And of course, we've plumbed and piped and ditched most of this part of the state, unfortunately. And so it's made things very difficult. Ernie Barnett's very fond of saying that the Everglades used to be 4 million acres. Now it's 2 million acres, but we get the same amount of rainfall. So it creates problems. So we've had extraordinary runoff from the basins in Martin and St. Lucie County. That's just the land, the urban runoff, the agriculture runoff. Obviously, it's been exacerbated by the discharges from Lake Okeechobee. The Corps has to release, however, this water because of the condition of the Herbert Hoover Dike. It is in an unacceptable condition, and in some areas there's some grave sensitivity to the integrity of that area. It's a 100-year-old earthen berm. Now the Corps is working on it. They've accomplished over the last 4 or 5 years, they've rebuilt 20 miles of it, and they have 100 miles to go, probably billions of dollars. What are we doing? DEP, Water Management District. Well, I can tell you the district owns an extraordinary amount of land, and they are pumping water to store water everywhere they can, so the water does not have to go down the St. Lucie and Caloosahatchee rivers and wind up in the estuary. The governor's directed me to expedite any permitting that can give some relief to the folks on the coast. One good example is the Tamiami Trail has been acting as a dam, essentially. The Water Management District will treat the water and send it south, and it was stacking up there. We have mammal issues. The deer were at risk of drowning because the water couldn't get out fast enough. And so in 3 hours, we issued a permit for the Water Management District to knock a 200-foot hole in the Tamiami Trail, allow that water to move south. The governor announced a $90 million project to raise a portion of the Tamiami Trail. It's essentially a bridge to permanently allow that water to move south so it does not all have to concentrate in the St. Lucie and Caloosahatchee River. The governor went to Martin County with Senator Negron, who's been a fantastic advocate on this issue, and announced an additional $40 million for what's called the C-44 project. And that's along the St. Lucie River. It is a mammoth water storage and treatment project that we are sharing with the federal government. With this $40 million, we'll be able to finish the construction of that project, at least from the state side, 2 years early. One of the things that we've been encouraging our federal partners to do is do the same and step up and fund the remainder of their project along the C-44. We have a similar project. It's got a cute name on the West Coast called C-43. And so we're looking forward to that coming online. I believe it was in the Water Resources bill that passed the House yesterday. Finally, one tool that the legislature has given me to solve problems in impaired water bodies is called the Basin Management Action Plan. We have an acronym, BMAP. And what a Basin Management Action Plan is it allows the scientists, the Water Management District, and DEP to sit down with local governments, local stakeholders, neighborhood associations, environmental groups, and say, okay, what are the problems that are causing this impairment, and what are the projects that we can implement to improve the health of this water body. Unfortunately, and it's done by secretarial order. It's enforceable, and no BMAP, no Basin Management Action Plan, had been prepared for the St. Lucie River. It was done only until when this administration came into office. And so we have a BMAP in place now for the St. Lucie Estuary, which triggers $300 million in projects that folks have agreed to fund. A lot of it is local government and Water Management District. It triggers some additional agriculture best management practices that will also help. Y'all are an influential group. One ask that I have of y'all, I testified, Ernie Barnett and I testified in Congress with Congressman Murphy and Congressman Radel, two congressmen from both coasts, held a congressional hearing on the issue that we're having in the southern Indian River Lagoon. And they asked me, they said, well, what's the magic solution? What do we need to do? And the solution is, there is not a magic bullet. What we need to do is finish the projects that we start. Y'all have a lot of political influence, and I would encourage you to ask your elected officials, finish the projects that we've started. I have the benefit of being able to kind of parachute in on the last 2.5 years, and I see where we've made our mistake. We kind of go with the flavor of the month, hoping that the problem is going to get solved overnight. So I ask you again, finish the projects that we started. Thank you all so much for listening.
Small token of our appreciation for coming down, and especially on short notice.
I'm going to have to fill out some forms for taking this.
Yeah, exactly. That's worth at least $10,000, so be careful with that. Well, as you may have heard, this is your first time here, but as you may have heard, the first questions come from the students.
Great.
And as you may have also heard, those are usually the toughest ones. So are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Who's going to go first?
Hello, my name is Dante Richford. I'm representing Everglades Preparatory Academy in Pokey, Florida. And referring to the article this morning from the Palm Beach Post, there was a bill that was proposed, staying for the restoring of the Everglades. My question is, if this bill is passed, what's the future plan for the improvement of the Everglades in the long run?
Sure. I'm assuming, I did not read the Palm Beach Post this morning, but I'm assuming it relates to the Water Resources Development Act that passed through the House yesterday. Thank you. Michelle with Senator Nelson's office has been awesome, by the way. What that does is it allows the Corps of Engineers and the Water Management District to move forward on certain projects. And it also helps us with our funding. The state and the Water Management District is supposed to be in a cost share with the federal partners, and we're way ahead. And so what this will do is it'll allow the federal government, hopefully, to move forward with some of their share of the projects. So very good question. Thank you so much, Dante.
Our next question comes from Dreyfus.
Hi. I'd like to start by saying thank you, Secretary Vinyard, for coming in and stepping in for Governor Scott. I'm Emily Greentree, and I'm representing the 19 students you see here from Dreyfus School of the Arts who are all very concerned about the environment. And our question is, in view of the economic impact sugar has on South Florida, where do you stand on the sugar corporations paying their fair share of the environmental cleanup?
Great question. The Florida legislature has enacted an Everglades agriculture area privilege tax. And it's not specific to any one type of agriculture company. It's no matter, whoever's farming in that area has to pay a special tax for the benefit of operating in that area. But the good news is also the agriculture industries are stepping up and doing much more with their best management practices. And that will reduce the amount of nitrogen and phosphorus that leaves their farms. I will tell you, we are all very fortunate to have somebody like Commissioner Putnam. Adam Putnam is our agriculture commissioner. Commissioner Putnam is very progressive in his thinking with respect to water and working with the agriculture community to come along. for some of those that may be a little slow to do so. I meet with my counterparts in the Southeast, throughout the southeastern United States, and they are very, very jealous, envious that we have a Department of Environmental Protection working hand in hand with the Agriculture Commissioner and the agriculture community, because they have to be at the table, and Commissioner Putnam knows that, just like I feel, we have to get the water right. It's imperative. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you have questions for the Secretary, please hold up your cards. We're going to go to questions from the audience, Secretary. First question from the audience. Should water control and quality control authority in Lake Okeechobee be taken from the Army Corps of Engineers and given to the state of Florida?
All right. So y'all know that Senator Negron is one of the things he's doing is looking at alternative solutions to what's going on in Lake Okeechobee, and obviously local government tends to be more responsive than the federal government. The question, the response that I gave the Congressional Committee when they asked, should the state government take over Lake Okeechobee, and my response is, I would not buy it as is. Just the dike itself is a multi-billion-dollar liability. I have one expert. He's a brilliant man, Dr. Aweti. I remember him because he's also an LSU grad, and we're not in the dam business. No pun intended. But so I would proceed with caution in taking over Lake Okeechobee and the structures.
Thank you, Secretary. There is a proposed Florida constitutional amendment which would dedicate 1/3 of the state's documentary stamp revenue, doc stamps, for purchasing sensitive lands. Do you favor that? And is this going to help or hurt current efforts?
I don't know that the Scott administration has come out publicly on that. I will tell you that we're very fortunate that we have invested heavily. We have millions and millions of acres that we have in conservation, and we ought to be thankful for the political leaders that took that step early on. I will tell you, when I first took this job over, my first budget, I had $545 million in debt service for land that was purchased 15 or 20 years ago. And I felt like everybody had had a big dinner party and they got up and left and I had the check. We need to be very cautious on buying additional land. It hurts some of our local communities because it takes land off the tax rolls. I think my land maintenance budget is about $200 million, and that price tag will continue to go up. One fear I have is, because here we've got millions of acres scattered all over the state, there's no way we can police that effectively. I don't want to have our precious land resources become the final resting place for roof and shingles and refrigerators and things like that. And that's what happens a lot of times in these rural areas. So sometimes the land is better managed by private ownership, and we're fortunate Florida has a number of 5th and 6th generation families that have been wonderful stewards of the land.
Here in Southeast Florida, we're very concerned about sea level rise issues. How, if there's going to be sea level rises, will that affect Everglades restoration and the other projects DEP is working on?
Wow, that's a great question. And I'm so glad I have Ernie Barnett here with the Water Management Districts. I do know the water management districts are focused on that. They have been doing some information sharing with some of the European countries on what they've been doing to do what they can to, whether it's sea level rise or climate change. I have within the DEP an organization called CAMA, and they are working diligently to monitor and see what's happening. One of the things that I think I can do is look at what's being emitted, what's our pollution loading in our air, because we hear so much about the effect of what's going in our air, and is it or isn't contributing to sea level rise and climate change. In April of 2013, Florida recorded its lowest ozone level since we've been measuring that issue, and we started in 1984. I've got a dynamic air division. We've dramatically reduced the amount of emissions in our state over the last few years, and so I don't have jurisdiction over China, but we're doing what we can in Florida.
Secretary Vinyard, you mentioned in your speech one of the things we need to do is to finish projects. How long will it take to finish the Lake Okeechobee project?
Ernie, do you know the Corps' schedule? Decade or more for Herbert Hoover Dike. We'll finish the C-44 project, at least the state side, in 2018. But with the money flowing from Governor Scott in this legislature, we can now move forward with it. We've bought 12,000 acres for this project, and then it's going to be up to Congress to do the federal share.
Commissioner Putnam believes that water supply issues will be one of the most important legislative issues to face us in the next decade or so. Not just too much water, but enough water in some places. Do you agree or disagree, and why?
Absolutely. Although Florida doesn't really have a water supply problem, we've got a water storage problem. We get lots of water. There's just no way to hold it. In order for folks to live down here, our forefathers decided to live down here, you need to have all these canals, and we altered the natural system. And so the Corps' canals do exactly the way what they're designed to do, and that's move the water to tide as quickly as we can. And so we get enough water, we've got to store that water. I will tell you that one of the things that I'm focused on is water reuse. We've got to get over the fact that, well, we're only using water once. We've got to use it more than once. Florida, while we're #1 in the country for water reuse, we can do better. We discharge 650 million gallons of treated wastewater per day to tide, every single day. One of the big opportunities I think we have is actually in this area. Dade, Palm Beach, and Broward is responsible for discharging 300 to 350 million gallons of treated wastewater to the ocean every single day. To me, that's an opportunity to do something more with that water.
You are the Secretary of DEP. Legislative session's right around the corner. Before the session, I'm sure the governor's going to come to you and say, Secretary, what are your top legislative priorities for this coming session? What are they?
Well, the good news is on the Everglades side is the legislature really stepped up and dedicated a 10-year funding stream, so the governor's landmark Everglades Water Quality Plan will have the appropriate funding to do the work. Y'all don't have any springs down here, but Florida is blessed with a number of springs, and we haven't treated them the way we should have. They're impacted by a number of things, and one of the things that I'm going to push for is additional funding to restore our springs, and I think I'm confident I'm going to be successful with that.
Speaking of the legislature, over the last couple of years, we've had a lot of changes to the Growth Management Act. What changes are you expecting this year to come down the pike?
The growth management side is not really within the DEP wheelhouse. I don't foresee much change in the growth management laws. So that's within the Department of Economic Opportunity.
Okay, we'll have them next month. One of our members writes, as a consumer, I am often frustrated that while we are talking water conservation, limited lawn watering so much water is being wasted by letting water out of Lake Okeechobee while we complain about conservation. What can we actually do about that?
It's the storage issue that I mentioned. And once the Herbert Hoover Dike repairs are made, they can store an extraordinary amount of water. You got to realize this is almost a 600,000 acre lake. And so if you can hold back an additional 6 inches or a foot of water, is an extraordinary amount of water. And Ernie can tell you exactly how much it would supply Florida, but that's why I think the Herbert Hoover Dike repair is so critical.
One of the issues that's very important throughout the country is our shale projects and the use of water and the water that comes from the use of shale. Is that an issue here in Florida? Is that going to be an issue?
Within DEP, there's a group called the Florida Geological Survey, and they've been in existence since 1907, and we have some fantastic geologists. And they tell me that the potential issues that may occur in some of the other states will not occur in Florida. We don't need to use the water for the hydraulic fracturing because our rocks are already fractured. From where I understand, where there's oil in Florida, it's in an area called the Boulder Zone. It's already broken up, and so I'm not a geologist, but that's what our scientists are saying.
And I know you have another appointment to go to, so we're going to end this with the last question. Within the next month, something will happen which will impact all Floridians, and we're going to ask you, in front of this entire crowd, to tell us about that and to tell us your decision as to this. Within the next month, Florida State, University of Florida, and University of Miami will all play. Who are going to win those football games? And you're being recorded, by the way.
LSU's not on the list?
No LSU.
I would say Florida State. But I'm an SEC guy.
Secretary Vinyard, thank you very much for your time today.